So this is in response to Miami Prepper's videos about gold. I have a lot of respect for the guy. I really enjoy watching his videos, and we do not agree at all about gold. His argument, after watching both of his videos, from what I recall, comes down to the dollar won't go down to zero, gold will not be accepted by the average Joe in a SHTF environment, and the government won't let you trade it, nor will they allow it to go to zero. Kind of the third and first point that I'm making here kind of go together. My point is that it's inevitable that it's going to go to zero, which will force the average Joe to accept it. And you're really going to have to be in a situation where you're going to have to take the chance of doing something the government doesn't like, because really, by prepping and buying a gun, in an SHTF situation, you're already doing something the government doesn't like, and very well may find in some ways illegal, whether you have gold or not. So first of all, it is inevitable that the dollar, like every other fiat currency in history and in the future, will go to zero. So this is really why I think it's going to hit the fan in this country. Why I think it's going to hit the fan in Europe, in Japan. So there's a sovereign debt bubble, and what you can't do is you can't separate the sovereign debt bubble in a country that can print its own currency from the currency bubble. Do interest rates in the United States reflect reality, supply and demand, and liquidity, and what the market would choose? No, not even close. It's the opposite. It's set by central economic planning. And this is what got Europe in trouble, is interest rates didn't reflect reality for years, so the weakest countries are the first to have a sovereign debt crisis. It's been progressing sort of in a way, seemingly like slow motion, if you don't live in these countries that are dealing with problems right now, like Greece, where the standard of living is falling off a cliff. It feels like suspended animation in Germany, the United States, Japan, these other countries where interest rates are still manageable. It's more like suspended animation. Not a boom, not a bust yet. That will accelerate, the bust will accelerate once countries that are too big to bail out start going down the same path. And they will, and they are, as we're watching in Spain and Italy. But so you know, Miami Prepper, that Europe can be what causes it to hit the fan here. It doesn't mean it will be. It could be war with Iran. It could be interest rates in Japan not getting that high. I mean, in 10-year being, somewhere south of 3%, it would surpass annual tax revenues. It doesn't have to get very high for this to happen. So a collapse in Japan could do it, which would take down their banks. I mean, anything that causes contagion to our financial system, or an Iranian war, which would send oil prices sky high and would force interest rates to an unsustainable level, like the stagflation we experienced a few decades ago, which we can't afford now. So this is why it's going to hit here. And what you have to understand central bankers around the world do is what they're fighting against, whether it's to support the housing market or support asset prices, when Europe says they're in favor of a pro-growth agenda over austerity, which is, not free market austerity, it's basically banker bailout austerity, keeping, debt slavery austerity. What they're really fighting against is price discovery. They're fighting against you paying for an asset what it's actually worth, whether it's stock prices, whether it's bond prices, whether it's interest rates. No matter what it is, they don't want you paying what it's actually worth. And the only tool central banks have on this is printing. Operation Twist is a little bit different, which I can get into, but it may be a subject for a different video. But it's basically increasing duration on their portfolio, on their balance sheet, to a level where they are totally removing any ability to combat inflation by selling treasuries without blowing up their own balance sheet. But this is what they do. And ultimately, because central economic planning and Keynesian economics doesn't work, they're going to print until they get their recovery. But they're not going to get their recovery, so they're just going to keep printing. Eventually, interest rates are going to go up because the sovereign debt crisis moves up the ladder. If we just keep on going through this suspended animation, and it's going to go from Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Italy, Spain, France, Germany, China, Japan, United States. It's not, so it will get here eventually. The whole consensus, which I think is ridiculous, but the market's trading on it, is that we're the best house in a bad neighborhood. That's why the U.S. Treasury bubble is continuing. That's why U.S. stocks are really expensive. That's why this stuff's already been priced in. That's how the U.S. Treasury bubble has become the biggest bubble in U.S. history, Navy world history. I mean, think of it this way: the quantity of the asset, the U.S. Treasury, has shot up. The quality plummeted. Price shot up. Everyone's on the same side of the trade. It's a massive bubble. So the next time money's going to be created, just think next recession. The government deficit is going to shoot up because safety net spending is going to go sky high. Tax revenues are going to plummet. Bank bailouts from contagion. This treasury bubble is going to pop. It's just economics. This is why every fiat currency goes bust, is because it allows a government to get over indebted, and then the only way to get them out of it is through inflation, because when they can issue their own currency, they don't default. So, you mentioned, though, that, but we won't ever let the dollar do anything besides be the world reserve currency. Look what we did to Saddam. And this is an outdated argument by about 10 years, because now you're not having some tin pot dictator saying that they're not going to accept dollar for oil anymore. You've already had trade agreements with Russia, India, China, Japan, Iran, saying that we're going to, when we trade with each other, we're not going to use the dollar. I mean, we're getting there. China and Russia have discussed moving away from the dollar being the world reserve currency, whether it's the renminbi, whether it's a basket of currencies. So this isn't just, whether the U.S. likes it or not, and of course they hate it, this era is coming to an end. Even if you have economic progress from here, if central bankers pull a rabbit out of their hats, that era is ending. So between economics and the inability to use brute force to maintain the dollar reserve currency status, this argument the dollar can't go to zero, I think it's unfounded. Why are you preparing for SHTF? I mean, if as long as the dollar has value, then it won't hit the fan, because people are still going to get their sugar in the mail. You're still going to get your, if unemployment shoots up again from these currently high levels because of Europe, as long as the dollar has value, then they can keep on sending unemployment checks in the mail and Social Security checks, food stamps and Medicare and Medicaid, anything they can send, and people aren't going to take to the streets because the quality of life hasn't fallen off a cliff yet. Because as long as interest rates are this low, we can fake it. It's when interest rates aren't this low anymore that we can't fake it. That's when people take to the streets. That's what we're watching happen in Europe. So it's going to have to be accepted by Joe Smo in the marketplace. The market is not ever going to consider gold and silver to be garbage. It's never going to happen unless we find this massive supply of it that makes it no longer rare. Then that's not going to happen. No, it's going to always hold its value, some value. Right now, it's a risk asset because because currently the treasury bubble is filling the role that gold's had for thousands of years, but that is going to end. And here's why it's important as a prepping tool. So in your first video about this that I saw, the one you entitled Gold Rush, you talked about how you talked to store owners and they're only going to accept cash. And I don't know if they're going to still mean business or not. I don't exactly know how commerce is going to work in this kind of SHTF situation. I'm pretty sure you won't be shopping at Walmart. But they're right, they will be accepting cash. It's just cash they won't be Federal Reserve notes. It'll be what has been cash throughout history, gold and silver. Federal Reserve notes will go to zero, which you've addressed in your second video by saying that that's impossible. So then another thing you mentioned in your first video is how, I mean, if someone's coming to you and they're really hungry, then they may offer a gold coin that they spent $1,600 on for a bag of rice. And think about how much of a waste of money that was. Well, that's not a statement about gold. That's just a statement about making an exchange when one party's completely desperate and the other party's not. That has nothing to do with gold. Whether you're trading gold, silver, dollars, ammo, bartering, whatever it is, if one's clearly desperate and the other's not, then you're not going to have an equivalent exchange. That has nothing to do with the market value of gold in an SHTF situation. You would imagine that most people who actually buy physical precious metals are going to be more likely to do some sort of prepping than people who laugh at gold investors. You are probably in a minority of legitimately knowledgeable and capable preppers, yet at the same time scoffing at gold. So what role does it have in, what role does gold and silver have in an SHTF situation? Now, first of all, government force. You're right. I've always felt like once it hits the fan, governments are going to say, they're going to blame the currency collapse on people who bought gold and silver. Right now, you get laughed at, you're going to get hated later. They're going to get pissed at you after they're done laughing at you. Because you're going to be, can you imagine now the rhetoric of whether it's Romney, Obama, or whoever, up there saying how, you gold owners, regular Americans using the American dollar are getting hurt because of these speculators buying gold and silver. They're anti-American, and so yes, the legal hammer's going to come down on you. But you know what? When they tried to take people's gold in the Great Depression, not everybody lost their gold. People who got scared and turned it over to the government lost their gold. People who didn't, not all of them lost it. And if dollars going to zero, then you at least have a shot with gold. You have a chance. It's not the only asset that's going to hold value. And if you are rich enough, and I'm not, that you're buying gold to maintain your wealth. So after you emerge from SHTF, you come out, emerge from the rubble, and you still have something. Well, then you follow the kind of highbrow advice of you don't just diversify what you invest in, but you diversify where you hold it. And it's in different countries where the government can't take it. That's a bit of advice that certainly doesn't apply for me, but yes, I do acknowledge that the government will likely try to steal it. And you know what else the government might try to steal? Your guns, your food. I mean, if there's a desperate situation and you're off the grid and you're self-reliant, you are an enemy to the government in that situation. Because to maintain their power and control, to maintain the status quo, you need to be dependent on them. And if you're not, you will be a target, whether you buy gold and silver or not. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. I don't think so. I really feel like that whole line of thinking, the inevitability of paper assets going to zero, with the government antagonizing gun owners, makes the fear of the government confiscating your gold a little irrelevant. So it'll have to be accepted. And what is the role of silver? If you're not trying to maintain your riches, why would you own gold and silver as prepping? Gold really does seem like more maintaining wealth. I think for most of us, silver is going to be more important. And the reason is because if you don't have silver in that scenario, you don't have money. So, I mean, or gold. If you don't have precious metals, you don't have money in that scenario, period. You're broke. You have stuff. You have real assets. You need real assets. You're right. Food and water are more important than gold and silver. Defense, the necessities are more important. But there's a role for money. And if it happens and you do your best prepping, but you know what, there's something you missed, or something you need breaks, or you run out of something and you need to get more, you can barter, but you'd rather have money. Because you don't want to give up something you have that's of value. If you have to, you'll do it. But you want money. And seeing as how gold and silver have been accepted for 5,000 years by more than just coin shops that I know they won't exist, but it won't just be coin shops that want your gold and silver. There will be black markets. When you look at any scenario where it hits the fan, there is a black market. It's the regular shops, maybe of the type of owners that you talk to, those are going to be the ones that go out of business, because when hyperinflation starts, the government's going to place high price controls. And while there are price controls, suppliers are going to say, no, screw this, and then stores are empty. So as long as there's a role for money, there will be black markets. And your prepping better be perfect or really good if you don't have any money.